So we create the object and then create the object here, the object 3, and initialize the objects, the values with the insert methods, our methods. So that means if you create the object, the initialization could be possible with the constructor. That's we already said it here, and also the initialize the values with the methods, the specific method for inside your class methods class. So you see the copy of the object. So you have a create object, and then this is the one of the constructor that I said, like directly importing the object itself to create your objects, to copy the one object to the another object. That's I mean. So here. So it's create the object and insert the initialize the values and then copy the constructor constructor directly and build this object. That means the object to object copy via the constructor. So building 4, it says because this is the one of the constructor that we have built it, only the building constructor is passing the not its own dependent field, it's passing the complex object and build the object itself as the input parameter as a constructor as a complex object. Here is in the case the building info object as a constructor arguments. So we define all the necessary information, then we can see the object 1, object 2, just like printing, just nothing to give it to a very special case, because that's I said that idea today. How can you define the class? How can you define the different types of constructors with the arguments and without arguments, and how can you define, how can you create the objects that we discuss here, and how can you initialize the values with the different way of doing. So you can initialize the values for the objects with the methods, or we can initialize with the different constructor that you need. And then here you see that we are calling that we have objects. This is the most important object that we said. It's object 4. We have the object 4. It has in the value as a value, building info as a input, and its build object is the object 4, and then we call the method building area calculation object. So let's go to the building area calculation object. You see we define the objects. We checked our object is there and checked all the values. That means we define our objects, we construct, we create the object, we initialize the objects. The values that we already defined here. You see, this is our values. Our objects is defined. So that means all the building wide and length value already set it here, and then we call the methods that we need, and then you construct the area calculation methods. And here this case, you see, we pass directly, not the constructor itself. We call directly the building area calculation methods, passing the object itself. That means this is the objects. So that means you build the objects from the other objects. We set the necessary values, create the necessary values here, create the objects, set the values, and then construct your constructor, the object 4 as a constructor, and then call the objects and call your methods that you need. So of course this is the same impression, but the different way of doing. It's the most important. You need to take care, really closely look on it. So you have an object inside, you have a class inside the other class, the building information, and then you build a constructor, the plot info constructor with the other objects. That's the constructor we are talking about. This is the object. You pass the object, building info object as arguments for building the plot info constructor, and then here you build the object, set the values, that's your simple getter and setter methods, and then you pass the object. You create the object with the initialized values and call the methods, because these methods has already has the definition of your implementation, the business logic. I mean that. So building information checked, it has a wide and length because we already set it wide and length into the building the object in initialization. Here see the wide and length is initialized, and then you can build it here. So this case we have an object. Okay, we can pass these methods. This is a complex object as the input parameter of the method. So we pass the object itself and check it everything. The same business logic, but the different calling approach and the initialization approach. And that's I say this is the most professional way to program it. That's we did it a couple of years. So if you understand very clearly how objects works, how the method implementation works, how the constructor handle you all complexity, even though how you combine the constructors and the methods, how you can initialize and create the object, then you can really good understanding of the object-oriented programming. And then you can I believe if you get it clearly, and I believe you can very quickly understand the Java programming, and you will be the really quick Java software developer or programmers. That's I mean. So that means we have different, or you initialize the object, create the object, initialize the values with the methods or constructor depending what you want, and then call the respective methods with the initialized values, and then see the effect of this one. So if I run the programs, you see the very first programs, the string. So you see the constructor is very simple. We just printing the let's see, run again. Maybe we can see. So that we see very simply constructing how the construction works. So it says object 1, it has two values. You see the value 10 and 100 is really settled. Because we build the constructor, we just simply copy, simply printing the object itself, just like printing how the value sits. If is not, the toString method is not set, how is it affected? Let's see. If the toString method is not set, then what happening here? So you cannot see you see the different values. The value is there, but you see the other format of the code. That's why the toString method, to see the information, right value, what you set it. I will discuss a little bit later about the importance of toString methods. So that means we have just simply, this is the constructor, we set it here, the second line of the console. You see the 10, 100, 200, and the RCC. This is our second object via the constructor, which is simply object creating. And then this is the third object that we created via the methods methods for the class. This is object C, and then you build it. This is everything is 100, and then all the values of the methods. You see that because buildings, and then the constructor we just like set it like these two values, not more than these values. So it's how we set it like these two constructor values, the constructor, and copy the constructor methods. You see the constructor methods, we just like simply copy these two values like this one via the constructor method to pass the plot info itself is a constructor method, constructor arguments. So here we define the values, and with object creation we initialize the values via the object, because the methods is waiting for the object as input parameters, and then we calculate the areas of the object, and then here the object methods is itself passing the objects what we created. So we can object like object 1, maybe it has different values, and then you see the effect. You see the effect of this one. So we can also pass the object like the object 1, not the object 1, where is object 1, you can pass it here. So that means doesn't matter. So you can see what the effect is running. So that's I mean. So how can you create the object, how can you initialize, how can you define the object inside the object, other object, of course that need to be aggregated or relationship, but at the moment just understand how the primitive object type, data types, this is all the primitive data type that you already knows, and accept the string, and this is our complex data types you can define inside the objects, and then you can define the different constructor that you need, and then and then you have the combination of different parameterized argument constructors, and then you can define